guy running with Latin. The guy run, my friend, but they're gonna catch him. You see that, my friend? They're gonna go get him. They're gonna go get him, my friend. Look.
What's up, fam? It's your boy Demuir here, purveyor of all sounds underground. Thank you for joining me on this YouTube Tuesday, where today we'll be discussing the topic of local bullshit. And what I mean by that, I will clarify a little bit later. But before we jump into things, what I need you to do right about now is to hit subscribe, like, and comment, as well as the notifications bell to stay in touch with any new videos that we have coming. So local bullshit, what does it mean? And I'll give you some detailed context about it, because in my travels and talking to other DJs and producers, I'm always hit with the question of, do you get a lot of gigs at home? Do you run into favoritism? Do promoters ask you to do a pay-for-play model in order to get into certain shows, etc., etc.? And my immediate response is, listen, this happens everywhere. It's not an LA thing. It's not a Toronto thing. It's not a London, UK thing. It happens everywhere. And I'm going to give you 3 solid tips in order to deal with these specific types of situations, because it's not really a situation at the end of the day. It's just a matter of, different promoters and how they choose to run their business. And you as a DJ and producer need to decide, based upon your goals, where you'd like to fall into that infrastructure. Okay, so here we go. Point number 1, or tip number 1, is to never, ever personalize things in any of these interactions. I remember starting out back in like 2010 when I decided to return to music, and I ran into this numerous times where a promoter would say, okay, if you want to attend my parties or be a part of my parties, you're going to have to take these stack of flyers and run them around the city, and then if there's a good turnout, then maybe we'll pay you. So I could have easily personalized that as something as, who the fuck does this guy think he is? Doesn't he know who I am? And then the flip side of that is to step away from it and look at it from a third-party perspective and say to yourself, well, why would this promoter be doing this? Even if it's for all of the wrong reasons, you need to ask yourself that question. And when you do ask yourself that question, you will find that it absolutely has nothing to do with you personally, other than the fact that you're a new guy on the block trying to get things done, or certain ignorant promoters or people who are just not aware of who you are as an artist and your maturity in the game, in the industry, at a local or even a national or international level. They may be completely absent of your contributions because they're just leaning on a tactic that has always worked for them in terms of promoting their parties. And that's just a reflection of where their parties are and what they attribute to success. Again, the key here is to not personalize things. Look at yourself and also ask the question, why is this happening? And then move forward with the appropriate response, which is simply, depending on your goals. My goals at the time were to have an impact in the industry at an international level, so it was very easy to me. I took a solid pass on that. So point number 2 is to stay focused on your own stuff, and it kind of bleeds out from my first point of not personalizing things. A lot of people talk about locally, it's always the same 4 or 5 motherfucking DJs that are always playing all the events when a big act comes into town. And when there's nothing going on, it's the same people doing the same things. And you just have to ask yourself, what does this have to do with me? So once you find out I'm not going to personalize things, and then get into the spectrum of focusing on my own shit, you'll find that none of that stuff really matters, and you won't even pay attention to it, to be quite frank. I could have spent an exuberant amount of time complaining and personalizing things and saying, I can't believe these guys are putting me on or not putting me on because they're always the same 4 people. But again, if you step outside of it and look at it against where your own goals are, you'll find how minuscule the stuff really is. And then you might even reach a conclusion that between the promoters and these 4 or 5 common DJs that get booked and billed all the time, there's probably some solid relationships there that they've always had, and it just works for them. People come out to see them. They've spent years cultivating their audience, and as a result, they are just leaning on a method of success that continues to work. Not to say that I don't feel that promoters should take a chance and actually recognize local talent for what they're doing at a national or international level and provide some inclusion from time to time. And I'm happy to say I've experienced some of that. But on the flip side, I've also experienced the other side where it's like you're an invisible person locally, and that ignorance is only erased once they start to realize that all of the international guys that they're booking are actually playing my fucking music and they're actually fucking with me. So, that being said, it's best to just focus on your own shit. You don't need to compete with other people. Your best measure of success is your measure against your own progression, against where you were yesterday versus where you're going today and tomorrow and so forth. And if you can look back comfortably and say, hey, my music catalog's growing, my skill set in DJing is getting better and better, none of this local stuff really matters. And you could still keep your head up high and walk around with a level of respect there. The other thing I would add in this conversation that people tend to mix up by not focusing on their own shit is they're looking for some form of validation from local people. And not to say that you shouldn't respect other people's opinions at a local level and so forth, but I think it's just important not to put all of your value into the basket of somebody else's fucking opinion about you. Your best opinion is wagered on what your goals are and how close you're getting towards those goals, and if you surpass them, what new goals you're looking forward to achieving. Okay, and the third and last point here is to put yourself in the other person's shoes. It's not always about you, and you probably heard this resonating in my first two earlier points, but it's very important that you remove yourself from a conversation of why am I not getting booked locally? Don't these motherfuckers know who I am? Even though I wrote a song called Motherfuckers Local Bullshit about the same topic. But for me, it was about a topic where I kept running into it at every show and different people I'd meet around the world talking about the bullshit that's happening to them locally. And I really do believe the moment you say to yourself, okay, what's life like in that other person's shoes, in that promoter's shoes, you'll start to discover things like maybe they don't have a big enough budget. Maybe they're not well seasoned in the promotion game. Maybe they're pretty comfortable with working with the people that they do work with. Maybe they're comfortable with a pay-for-play sort of schematic. And again, it's all of these things that other people outside of yourself equate to success. And when you realize and start asking that very question or putting yourself in the other person's shoes, again, all of these other things just flow by the wayside and become very minuscule versus being this massive amplified thing that's occupying your mind on a continual basis. And why me? Why is this happening to me? People need to recognize. You need to just drop that conversation and again, not personalize shit, focus on your own stuff, put yourself in the other person's shoes, and you'll find that you're going to go far in the shit, and the local topic really doesn't matter in the greater scheme of things. Again, depending on. So there you have it. Thanks for joining me today on the topic of local bullshit. Let me know what your experiences have been like as a DJ and producer locally by commenting and engaging in a conversation on this video. And stick around and check out some of my other videos as well. Peace.